Thank you, Max, and welcome
No worries.
everybody. We're very, very excited to be here today and chat with you a little bit about the Canadian Wildlife Federation and more specifically the Canadian Conservation Corps program. My name is Kira Balson. I'm the CCC Youth Leadership Assistant Manager and I help support the program. And I'll pass it over to my colleague Max to introduce himself.
Yeah, my name is Max Mullen. I am the Atlantic Canada Youth Leadership Specialist for the Canadian Conservation Corps. I'm also an alumni of the program, which I'll be talking with you a little bit later on in the presentation, but really happy to be the co-host here this evening.
Amazing. So let's start off just with a little bit of info about CWF. So you have a baseline about our organization. And so something exciting about this year is we're celebrating our 60th year in 2022. And so the Canadian Wildlife Federation's mission is to conserve and inspire the conservation of Canada's wildlife and habitats for the use and enjoyment of all. And CWF conducts all of its activities through a cooperative approach, working with people, corporations, NGOs, and governments to inspire collaboration in achieving wildlife conservation, using the best available science-based information to develop our policies, programs, and communications. And so they're kind of four different buckets that ways that CWF works. So advocacy, and that's working with governments to develop policies such as lowering speed limits to the St. Lawrence to help whales avoid ship strikes. A number of science programs working with species at risks, including turtles and bats, American eels, salmon, the North Atlantic right whale. We also do nature connection and personal action through things like BioBlitz and citizen science programs using iNaturalist. And education and leadership. And that's where our program falls under, the Canadian Conservation Corps. We also have a junior program for 15 to 18-year-olds. That's called Wild Outside, as well as a few other programs, including Wild Spaces, working with classrooms, and the Wild Family Nature Club, working with families. So let's dive in and chat a little bit more about the Canadian Conservation Corps.
Yeah, so the Canadian Conservation Corps is a program we're really happy to be able to facilitate. It's federally funded through the Canada Service Corps, and it's a three-stage program that roughly takes place full-time over the course of the 4 months through stage 1 and 2, whereas stage 3 is a little bit more flexible and done kind of in your spare time as a summary to the program. We've been running since about February, I believe, of 2018, very early 2018, where our very first cohorts were kicking off. Right at the beginning of the Canada Service Corps, we were really happy to, really excited to get the CCC off the ground back then as one of the first Canada Service Corps programs delivering programming. So we're really proud of that fact as well. We have had many groups pass through so far with a couple hundred alumni, which we're very fortunate to have interacted with over the years. And so, yeah, I'll move on to speak a little bit more about how the program breaks down and the stages here. So stage 1, of course, is centered around a leadership expedition. So I'll get into the details of that. Stage 2 is centered around a 3-month placement at a conservation organization where participants learn from and work with that organization to get their first steps in conservation fields. And stage 3 is bringing that experience together to deliver a service project, an environmental service project in their local communities. So stage 1 involves a lot of that sort of skill building, leadership development. I touched upon that leadership expedition. So that is usually a 2-week experience in the outdoors, 14 days, where we are happy to partner with Outward Bound Canada. They facilitate a expedition that includes like leadership roles and leader of the day. The whole crew is rotating through different roles that help to facilitate the expedition and navigation and map skills and a number of different things like that. So it is really an involved experience where the participants are taking on roles to facilitate it as well. Outside the expedition and as part of it as well, we feature the remote first aid course. So that is a step up above from regular first aid that includes sort of training on how to do that in wilderness and remote areas, really with that outdoor context as well, to make our participants really feel as safe and able to respond to incidents in the outdoors too. That is also supplemented by the Outdoor Council of Canada's Field Leader course. That talks a little bit about how to lead a day event in the outdoors and touches upon skills like risk management and proper planning, and how to lead an outdoor adventure for yourself, but also for friends and families, and engaging other members of the community going forward. The final extra thing we have there is the wild education resources that CWF produce. They're primarily targeted to teachers, but they're an education resource that features a number of games and activities and discussions that are all facilitating that environmental talking point in relation to them. So they're variations of games like Octopus, but where the people in the middle might be, for example, trash in the ocean, where the octopuses or whales or dolphins are trying to get it from one side to the other as they're, continuing to navigate their way through life. So lots of different really interesting games like that. And a lot of different sort of team building and leadership experiences as well, to come together as a really special family of 10 individuals who get to experience that expedition on their own. So next up is just a few groups that we've been through here. These were the Fortagers. They did a canoe trip in Algonquin Park. I like to highlight a few people when I'm discussing these groups. Charlotte Lease is on the left there. I don't know if you can see my mouse right now, but she is now working with the CWF as part of the Wild Outside program in St. John's, Newfoundland. Lauren Beaton's in the back here. She was also part of the CCC who worked with the Wild Outside program in Moncton, New Brunswick, and moved on to Parks Canada from the experience that she had. This is a group called Rick's Rangers, who did a lovely sea kayaking expedition off the coast of British Columbia, in and amongst the islands off the coast there, which is just an absolutely beautiful area to be. This is Team Chinook. They did a 2-week hike in the Rocky Mountains of Alberta. There's Cameron Lane on the right here. He now works with the conservation side of the CWF in the Marine team, based out of Halifax, Nova Scotia. And they're working with ropeless fishing gear right now. So Cameron turned his stage 2 into an experience into a paid position with the Marine team as well. This is the Mountaineers, who are also another group that did a mountain hiking expedition. In the center here is Michaela, who worked with the Wild Outside program in Ottawa for a little while before transitioning into a role with the marketing department. So she manages a lot of the social media these days for the Canadian Conservation Corps and the Wild Outside programs as well. Here's Ocean's 11. They're another sea kayaking group. So we do sea kayaking expeditions on both coasts, both in BC, which is what Ocean's 11 and the earlier group did, but also along the coast of Nova Scotia and the LaHave Islands. And this year we'll be doing one off the coast of Newfoundland as well, around the Bay of Exploits, around the season where icebergs are things you can see. So lots of different expeditions in that sense. Chris in the back here is working with the Wild Outside team in Toronto these days, facilitating the program there. And the Wolfpack is another group that did a winter camping expedition and had a great time in the outdoors. We've done some winter camping expeditions in a couple parts of the country. One of the highlights is in Mount Carleton Provincial Park in New Brunswick in the past, where participants have even gotten to do a little bit of dog sledding as part of their expedition experience as well. So lots of really valuable experiences coming from the courses on either side of the expedition, but the leadership expedition itself is just, from personal experience, a magical experience that you really can't beat. So we're going to go into stage 2 now, and I'll pass it off to Kira to speak a little bit about that part of the program.
Great. Thanks, Max. All right. So once participants wrap up with stage 1, the exciting expedition and intensive training, then participants head home for a week to prepare and get ready for stage 2, which is a 3-month immersive field placement with one of our conservation organization partners across the country. And so this is a really great opportunity to gain new skills, to networks, explore new parts of Canada. Although I will say, before the pandemic, a big part of the Stage 2 experience was traveling outside of participants' home province to experience a new part of Canada. These days, we're doing more in-province placements, and then also learning about the conservation field. So participants are immersed in exciting hands-on conservation and environmental field learning with a mix of science-based fieldwork and education outreach. So participants work alongside experts in a variety of opportunities, including habitat creation and restoration, wildlife management, environmental science, public awareness and environmental education. And CCC participants give their time and their talents to our partners while gaining a diverse experience, building hands-on skills, networking, and exploring different parts of their province or their country. So we work with partner organizations from small nonprofits to large organizations. So here are some examples of some of our partners. You can see at the top there, McGill Galt Nature Reserve. We've got participants that are doing some trail building there. We've partnered with Scales Nature Park, where participants have gotten to work with reptiles in a real hands-on sort of way. We host placements at CWF as well, for example, the American Eels Project, as well with the Help the Turtles program. So these are just a couple of the examples, and I think we've got a couple more on the next slide. Mm-hmm. Right, so here we've got some more placements. So the BC Wildlife Federation, I believe we have some participants working on a wetlands restoration project there. At the Ukululette Aquarium, doing some education outreach and teaching the public about different species in the ocean. And so really it's just a wonderful opportunity for participants to learn more about the conservation field and get their foot in the door. And a lot of participants have gone on to either get hired at their placement or have gotten connections with some of our other partner organizations. It's a real opportunity to network and build that sort of community of conservation, people who are passionate about conservation and conservation experts. Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to talk again about stage 3 of the program. So in stage 1, you really build that connection with nature. I want to be clear, actually, jumping back just a little bit, that we really endeavor to be a barrier-free program. So that includes being cost-free. The program is absolutely free to participate in. But in addition to being free to participate in, we are also able to remove the barrier of it is an unpaid internship in stage 2, and you aren't making funds in stage 1. But we're able to cover your costs at home. So for example, while you're at your placement, we can cover rent and the cost of car insurance, a cell phone bill, some internet bills, these kind of things like groceries and the accommodations for your stage 2. These are all things that we're able to cover. And so we're bringing that connection with nature that everyone is able to make in stage 1, and the experience that everyone is able to gather in stage 2, and bringing that back to their local communities again in stage 3. And stage 3 is an environmental service project of some sort, where we ask you to take a leadership role through the course of 120 hours. Now, that's quite flexible in a timing sense. That is carried out kind of part-time in addition to your regular life, returning to normalcy in that sense. But we've had a lot of really, really neat projects. We'll touch upon a few of them in a little bit here. But it really is identifying some sort of conservation issue in your community that you're interested in, and developing some sort of environmental service project to try and tackle that issue and to make a difference on it. The alternative option for that, something we're also really happy about, is participants who have partnered either with their stage 2 placement or another local organization to take on a project that partner has identified as something they'd really like to act on. So for example, in New Brunswick this year, we had a participant who had worked as a ESL professor in China and had returned back to his home province of PEI, was placed with the Nature Trust in New Brunswick, and worked as his stage 3 to connect them with the Chinese cultural associations in Moncton and Fredericton as a way to broaden and diversify the volunteer base of the Nature Trust, but also as a way to connect those communities with the outdoor preserves that they were able to take advantage of and experience as well. So we'll touch upon some more projects. The second part of that as well is doing some environmental education and outreach to youth. So being able to speak about your CCC experience is great, but also being able to raise awareness about the issue that you're looking to develop your project on. So just the two-part there, and that 120 hours also includes lots of things like planning and reaching out to partners and the implementation and the analysis. And so that sounds like a little bit of an intimidating number at a glance, but really there's a lot of different ways that you can contribute to that number, and you find that you really get close to it pretty easily. So we're going to pass it on to some projects here. Kira, I'll let you start with Heather here.
Great. Thank you, Max. So Heather Blanchette teamed up with 2 other participants from her cohort to start a podcast called Moose Are Bigger Than You Think. So Heather, Vicky, and Em noticed that there was a gap that they saw that existed between young Canadians and the conservation field. And so they decided to start this podcast for their project, where they brought on experts to chat about various topics within the field of conservation. And it's really taken off. And in fact, now we've engaged the three of them to continue their podcast in a paid capacity through the CWF.
Yeah, it's a really special project, and that is on Spotify and a number of different platforms. So if you're interested in watching an episode or listening to an episode, you can do so right after this if you'd so like. It's really, really great content. I was in group 5 myself. Michael Chen was also in my group. He did something a little bit similar to that New Brunswick experience I was talking about. He came back to his local community of Markham, Ontario, and conducted outreach to the new immigrant youth populations there. So he worked with some community centers and took these groups of newcomer youth who had only been in Canada a very short time and led them on outdoor excursions, outdoor hikes, working in the ability to pick up some trash and do some service while they were out there, both as a way to connect them with their new homes and feel more comfortable in their ability to engage in nature here in Canada. But also as a way to really build up their confidence and show them that they're able to do these kind of things and make a difference in their new places as well. So we'll move on to Verena as well. I'll pass it back to Kira.
Thank you. All right. Yeah, Verena's got a great project as well. She comes from a small community in BC, and Verena decided to build insect hotels, engaging local school groups and community groups in her area. And it was really neat what she did. So she built the insect hotels in the shape of the letters of her home community, and posted them up around her town with a QR code that people could go to learn more about what insect hotels are and the importance of pollinators. And she's done a really, really fantastic job on her Stage 3 project there.
Absolutely. And we have another one here from Lisa Chen. Lisa was in group 7. She was from Mississauga, Ontario, spent some time at the Ucluelet Aquarium, as we referenced a little bit earlier. Her Stage 3 project was to start the Let's Talk Butts campaign. And so that is an Instagram page. If you search it up, you can find it. But that goal was to eliminate cigarette butt litter through education and cleanups, and has since been spread across the globe to a number of other different countries. And so she really identified an issue where she was seeing people, flicking cigarette butts when they were done with them in places where, unfortunately, they could land in stormwater drains, they could be swept away off roads and into places where they did become a pollutant and were affecting wildlife like geese and ducks who could mistake them for food on occasion. And so really started to make a difference there, raising awareness about this issue, and has continued to do amazing work with oceans conferences and other things. She really started here with the Let's Talk Butts campaign. Next up is Nelson, and I'll pass that to Kira again.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, so Nelson is a talented musician. And so for his stage 3 project, he actually created an album. So he wrote and recorded and produced a series of songs that were about the places that he visited throughout his time in the CCC program, connecting with nature and sharing his love and passion for the outdoors. He did a really, really good job on his project. And you can find his music as well on Spotify and Apple Music as well. Does it say there? It's a bit small on my screen, Max, what the name of his album is there? You can probably pull it up and put it in the chat if it isn't.
I'll take a look at that in just a minute, or well, maybe while I'm talking about my experience. It doesn't say there, I don't think, and so
okay,
yeah, that's a great point. But
that.
yeah, that'd be great. There's some great songs on there, I know for sure. In the meantime, I'll take a second to talk a little bit about my experience. So as I mentioned, I was I am an alumni of the program. Excuse me. I worked with. So I started in September of 2018, and so my stage 1 was a hike through the Rocky Mountains. It was 14 days of just an absolutely beautiful experience. It was really just such a special time. I was in a group of 10 other individuals or 9 other individuals, and we came together so much as a team, tackling some really challenging weather that just was unusual for the year, and getting some really gorgeous views of so many beautiful places in the Rockies. So I can't stress enough that being out there for 14 days where you get into a routine and you're just immersed and disconnected from so many of the comforts we have in urban life, like your cell phone and YouTube and the internet. Just being away from that for so long, and coming together as a family to tackle so many different challenges that we were facing. It was just really, really a special experience, and I can't recommend that program, part of the program, enough. After that, my placement was with Hope for Wildlife in Seaforth, Nova Scotia. Hope for Wildlife is a wildlife rescue and rehab. There's a picture of me on the left with one of the education squirrels that was on site there. That was a gray squirrel who was actually invasive to Nova Scotia, so we couldn't release the fellow, but they made a great talking point about invasive species and the impact that they can have. And so I spent a lot of time working with wildlife, hands-on experience, being a part of that rehabilitation process. I got to, one of my highlights was feeding and caring for a baby porcupine, which, by the way, if you've never seen a baby porcupine, I encourage you to Google it right after this presentation. They are ridiculously adorable, and I just got to learn so much more about what it was like to work with wildlife and the challenges they were facing, the experiences they were facing. I had never picked up a wild animal in my entire life before I stepped on site at Hope for Wildlife. And actually, I got off the plane at the airport in Halifax, and one of the first things we did was respond to an injured bird that was on site, and we were bushwhacking through parts of Halifax Airport trying to find this injured animal. And so it was really a life-changing experience. I was fortunate enough to be hired on at Hope for Wildlife at the end of my stage 2, and I worked there for much of 2019. I went back to join the CWF in the Wild Outside program in Toronto for a little while, but I was fortunate enough to come back out here to Nova Scotia, and I'm working with the CCC, of course, but my partner and I are both still associated with Hope for Wildlife, volunteering and working for them. My partner works for them full-time these days, and so it's really been a life-changing placement for me with what I learned and the opportunities that came out of it as well. Those are some really cute baby raccoons on the right as well. There's many hundreds that come through Hope for Wildlife every year, so the opportunity to work with them was also pretty special. I kind of took that experience back when I went back into Ontario for my stage 3. Unfortunately, it was the very first wave of COVID that I was looking to deliver my stage 3 project, which made it really challenging. There was a lot of unknowns at the time. So I kind of pivoted. What my plan was to do was to do a series of shoreline cleanups and trash pickups along the Humber River Trail system in Toronto. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that. We weren't allowed to gather in groups at the time. And so I pivoted to talking about it on Instagram through some posts and stories that I'd made to raise awareness of some of the experiences that I had seen at Hope for Wildlife of animals that were negatively affected by trash, whether that was a juice string caught around their neck, or they'd inhale or ingested some sort of trash, whether that be an abandoned fishing line or fish hook, to other like Let's Talk Butts campaigns. And so I was able to do some solo cleanups and raise some awareness about what that was like. So that's what my stage 1 through 3 was like. We'll talk a little bit more now about how to apply to the Conservation Corps and how to be a part of this amazing program. So I'll pass it to Kira to talk a little bit about that.
Great. Thank you, Max. Yeah, so if you are interested in applying to the CCC, please visit our website, and I'll put the link here as well in the chat so you can check that out. And simply click on Apply Now and you'll fill out the application. There will also be a link there to the Outward Bound Canada application and medical screening. So you'll complete that. And then once your application has been reviewed and accepted and approved, you'll be contacted for an interview. And you'll learn a little bit more about what upcoming groups we have, and we'll share a little bit about that in a moment too. We'll confirm the dates that you're available, and then we'll get you set up with the meet and greet call. You'll meet your youth leadership specialist who acts as a support and guide throughout all 3 stages of the program, and then you're good to go.
Mm-hmm. And you can get it, just CanadianConservationCorps.ca is a really easy way to get to the website as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Max.
Yeah, so in 2022, we have a couple of groups coming up that we're actively recruiting for right now. There is still a spot open in the Nova Scotia hiking group here coming up in February 26th and onwards from there. They're doing a 2-week hike through the Kejimkujik National Park / Tobiatic Wildlife Reserve in sort of southwestern Nova Scotia. It's a really beautiful part of the country that not a lot of people actually get to trip in the Tobiatic. So they'll be doing that and seeing some places that many people don't get to see ever here in Canada. After that, the March 23rd start is a similar group in Nova Scotia here. In February, and there's a group in Ontario that'll be doing a hiking trip through Algonquin Park, which is an absolutely beautiful place. I've spent some time there in my personal life and can say that it's really, really an amazing place to spend some time. On March 23rd, there's another group coming up in BC. There's some sea kayaking expedition, which is a really, really beautiful thing. You saw some pictures there earlier on in the presentation. And there's more opportunities to come through summer and fall of 2022 as well as we confirm some groups. And as the federal funding year comes to a close, we'll be renewed for another chunk of programming this year. So keep your eye out for more opportunities. So I'd like to open up the floor really quick here to see if there's any questions about the CCC. Kira, I can't see the chat, so if there's anything that comes up in there, please feel free to pass it on as well. And we can both field questions, of course. But yeah, does anyone have any questions about the CCC? And no worries if you don't, or if it's, I know it's a lot of information right now, but you can absolutely get in touch with us here at the CCC for some information. We're happy to field some questions via email. CanadianConservationCorps.ca, again, has a lot of information on the website there. And I really, really can't recommend enough just how amazing this experience is and how much it's been a life changer for me personally in my personal life, in my career, and just getting the opportunity to spend some really, really amazing time in nature.
So we do have one question here in the chat from Claire. Claire's asking, is there any possibility within the CCC to do a shorter program, or can you only apply to do all 9 months? And so, great question. Well, with the CCC, it requires a 4-month full-time commitment. So stage 1 and 2, those are the full-time commitment where you really do need to be there for the full time. Once you complete your stage 2 placement, that's when participants return home to do stage 3, and that's the part-time commitment. And so that's done on a volunteer basis outside of school or working hours. So there is that option there. We have been exploring the possibility of a more flexible CCC program, but that's not currently yet being offered at the moment.
Yeah, that's right. It's not currently out there, but it's something we're really, really excited to try and take on. It's something we're pushing towards hopefully doing. So if you're looking for that more flexible experience, I encourage you to check in again in the fall or next spring, around this time next year. Is probably a great chance to take a look at that. And there may be a shorter opportunity that's way more flexible for those of you who maybe don't have the time to commit right now.
Yeah. I think what we found too with students who are currently studying or might be in university is kind of that May to September timeframe works really well for starting stage 1 and 2. And sometimes it does line up well, so that can work. Other times, participants have taken sort of like a gap year or a semester off in order to participate in the program.
Yeah, and just to be clear, this is a program that is ages 18 to 30 as well. I think we mentioned that earlier, but that means that if you're looking to do it after secondary, after post-secondary, you can do that as well. But it is a great opportunity for the gap year as an opportunity too.
Oh, thanks, Max. That's great.
No worries. I just figured I'd dump those in the chat there.
Perfect. So there aren't any other questions in the chat, but as Max said, if you think of anything that comes up later, please reach out to either one of us and we'll be happy to chat with you. And thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here today and learn a little bit more about CWF and the Canadian Conservation Corps.